Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmitz_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it Wednesdays here. It's Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Schmitty currently, I believe, sitting in the Atlanta airport right now as he's on his way out to Indy. What a day he's had. It's Will Wilson alongside Elijah Herbel as we're filling in for Chris today. Can't wait to have him back in tomorrow as should have a full day of interviews ready to bring for you tomorrow afternoon on the show. But for now, Will and I taking you through. Chris was this morning staying at his brother's house in Omaha as he awaited his flight. And when he made it out, he got on the plane. I think he's probably can explain the story a little better tomorrow, but apparently they had to disembark the entire plane because of a strange scent in the back, which was unexplained, and they were forced to vacate the flight and go through some checks. And Chris has been rerouted down through Atlanta before he goes all the way back up to Indianapolis. So he's going to be there eventually, but for now, Chris, somewhere east of Nebraska. I don't even know where.
Yeah, he must have been on the same plane as all the other Iowa media members. They must have been put in the back, the Iowa media members, so that's probably what the smell was.
Took me a second to get that one.
It's too bad. Now he will be getting to Indianapolis later than he wanted, but the bars are, I'm sure, open till 2, so he'll be fine.
I'm just imagining that. Like, you get yourself a burrito and a beer in the airport, and you hop on the flight and you go, oh man, I'm not going to make it through this flight. So you go hop back in the bathroom. They cancel the whole flight because of you.
Well, and then that's okay because then you're stuck there for a few hours. But the bar's open too at the airport. So
yeah. Well, Chris, hope to hear back from him tomorrow. Maybe as long as he doesn't have any more flight problems, that we should be hearing him from tomorrow. But Chris, again, headed off to Big Ten Media Days. It's Will and Elijah filling in today. 402-466-3776 is how you get connected with the show today. Give us a call. Give us your thoughts because we got a nuke to start off. Get there in a second. But you can also send us a tweet at Herbal Essences for myself, at Willie on the radio for Will, or at ESPN Lincoln is also a great way to find us. Shoot us a tweet, shoot us a DM, whatever you want to do. We'll get around to it. That's how you get connected with the Hail Varsity Radio show today. We got a fun show coming up as we've got Mike Babcock here in about 15 minutes. Babbers obviously has seen many a media day in his time, so excited to get some thoughts from him on that. We got Shuey joining us from Wilderness Ridge 440. Shuey's going to be joining us talking about the Open, going to help Will's golf swing maybe just a little bit.
And yours.
Mine's probably the worst one here. I'm terrible. I am so bad.
Yes, you admit it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hitting ground balls and pop flies, and I'm not playing baseball. I'm just golfing, and it's like, I mean, it'll go a good 100 yards on the ground. Like, I'll put a charge into that thing.
Yeah,
but
let's go to the range sometime. I could help you out.
Okay, it's probably my grip or something stupid like that.
It's probably several things.
It's not just one.
It's what a golf swing is, man. It's like a mental checklist of 15 things.
Well, last time I went out and golfed, I had immense back pain for the next 3 days. Do you think you know?
Yeah, you probably didn't stretch.
No, I didn't stretch. I was at Topgolf.
Well, you need to stretch before. Think about it.
I'm not
what your body's
at
doing.
Topgolf to stretch. I'm at Topgolf to hit bombs.
Think about, well, okay, I get it, but yeah, that's how people, the golf careers end early is because they're throwing out their backs.
Well, didn't Tiger have serious back problems for a while?
Yeah, so big time.
Yeah.
Big time. He had like 3 back surgeries.
All right, so stretching is I really didn't think that golf was a sport I needed to stretch for.
You got to
really.
stretch. Got to.
Okay.
Or else you're going to be in pain.
Okay, well, we also got Jacob Padilla coming up at 5:05 in hour 2. Jacob, big Suns fan, going to give our condolences to him and maybe talk a little Husker basketball as well. And then a Jock Doc coming up later in hour 2 as well. But what I want to start off with is an absolute nuke that has been dropped by the Houston Chronicle today, as they have reported that Oklahoma and Texas have both reached out to the SEC, seeing the willingness of the SEC to allow Texas and Oklahoma to leave the Big 12 and join. Now, we're 10 years removed from Texas A&M and Missouri jumping ship and going to the SEC. Going to get to that in a second, but just right off the bat, Will, I want to ask you, it would be a death blow to the Big 12, and it just seems like I'm not sure it makes sense for either Texas or Oklahoma.
I could see it for Oklahoma. and I think we all can, more than Texas. Okay, Texas, it doesn't make sense because they already have a ton of leverage down there. They're already making a ton of money. And let's be real. When you think of the Big 12, do you think of Texas? I do. I know a lot of people will think of Oklahoma, but the Big 12, when they look at themselves, they look at Texas. So it makes sense for Oklahoma. But for Texas, I'm trying to figure that one out.
And it doesn't make sense to Oklahoma to me because they're been Big 12 champions 6 straight times. We know 2 years from now, if you just win the Big 12, you got yourself a bid to the college football playoff.
Sure.
It's so much harder of a path to go win the SEC, and I get it. I mean, they have all the at-large bids this year, and maybe it'll raise the stature of Oklahoma, and people say, oh, they're not a joke anymore, and maybe they want more competition during the season so that they can be better prepared for the college football playoff. I mean, they've bowed out in the semifinals the last 3 times they've been to the college football playoff, and they got murdered by LSU, and there's debate whether they even deserve to be in that college football playoff, but still, maybe they're doing it for a little bit of added competition, but to me it's just like,
yeah, that could be.
Give yourself 3 years and you're going to have an automatic ticket punched to the college football playoff every single year.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point, but what's more important? Making the playoff every year and not getting into the championship game, or money, or playing against an Alabama, all those other great teams, rekindling some Big 12 rivalries. You're probably going to make a good amount of money over in the SEC. Now, I'm not saying you think you'll make more than you are in the Big 12 right now, Elijah?
Well, a complicating factor here is that these schools, Texas and Oklahoma, have already signed on to the Big 12 agreement that the Big 12 owns their TV rights until 2025, regardless of if they're in the conference or not. So if Texas and Oklahoma go to the SEC, the SEC won't have their media rights. The Big 12 still will. So the Big 12 would still be making. I'm not sure how that would work. I am not in.
Who who airs the Big 12? Is it Fox? Is it ESPN?
Fox.
I think they all do. Unlike the Big 10, who has exclusive, rights with the Big 10 network. There's no Big 12 network, in which, hey, maybe that's the reason they're wanting to get out of there.
Well, there is Longhorn Network.
There is Longhorn Network, but that's just for Texas, right? In Oklahoma's case, that would make sense, right? They want to be seen more around those better teams. Let's be real. People are tuning into CBS to watch those 3 o'clock afternoon games, and those have the most eyes.
I mean, for Oklahoma, when I look at this, sure, whatever. It makes sort of sense to me because you're going to go make that money eventually. But with Texas, is Texas really prepared to go jump ship to a conference where they are going to be a middle-of-the-road team?
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, in terms of attention, they're still a big brand, don't get me wrong. But whenever they go jump ship to the SEC, are they bigger than Georgia? Are they bigger than Alabama?
No, they're not.
Are they bigger than Florida? I mean, you can make an argument that they're on par with Florida. I just don't see Texas going and dominating the media landscape like they do in the Big 12. Even Oklahoma, they've won the Big 12 for 6 straight years, and every single year we still ask, is Texas back?
Well, think about this, though. We talked about Missouri, right? They made the change. How has that worked out for them? Meh. You could say it's been okay.
Maybe the SEC can do a straight swap. Maybe they can send Missouri back and take Oklahoma.
But then also Texas A&M, right? It's worked out for them.
Texas A&M, right. I will argue that going to the SEC has actually worked out better than any of the other teams that were part of that conference realignment 10 years ago.
So we know it works.
With Texas A&M, they were able to differentiate them schools from the other schools in Texas by jumping ship to the SEC. Before, whenever they were in the Big 12, it was Texas was that big school in Texas. And then below them you had Baylor, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, all a tier below Texas. And now with Texas A&M in the Big 12, or the SEC, out of the Big 12, they're not a joke anymore.
They got a way to get away from the Longhorns, and now the Longhorns are wanting to come back. And then A&M's like, oh, come on!
Texas A&M can look at that and go, we won. We made the right choice here. They got out of the Big 12 whenever the time for getting out of the Big 12 was right. They jumped ship to the SEC.
By the way, so did Nebraska. They didn't go to the SEC, but we got the hell out of there.
But the Texas A&M fans, I don't think, want to go back to the Big 12, where there's still a good contingent of Husker fans that want to go back to the Big 12. And this news today just tells me I would never go back to the Big 12. It's still a cluster.
You're at a great point, man. People have questioned the move to the Big 10. I think this just shows that it was the right move, because now think about this. Let's say Texas and Oklahoma do move. And by the way, I don't know what to take about these reports. I'm sitting back. I know we're having a radio conversation right now, but...
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Rolling through a Wednesday here on Hail Varsity.
See what happens. But if this does happen, what happens to the Big 12, Elijah?
I mean, this got to be the end for the Big 12, right? That's their two money makers. No one wants to go watch Kansas versus Iowa State on a Saturday afternoon.
No.
I mean, they could still make it in basketball, I guess, but when football's the moneymaker.
You could find some schools to join that would make it, a little more interesting.
But think back to 10 years ago when Nebraska left, what happened? An exodus. It was conference development, not just out of the Big 12, but it was everywhere. I mean, a whole conference died. An entire conference died.
And that was 10 years ago, so 10 years later, maybe it's like a 10-year cycle. Huh?
I mean, friend Bill Dolman, he's pretty locked in. He thinks that the next wave is going to be coming in 2024 whenever a lot of TV rights deals start expiring. I believe 2024 was the year. We can ask him on Friday.
I think that sounds right.
But the question to me is just what's the reason for West Virginia to stay in a conference like the Big 12 if Oklahoma and Texas are gone? I think they jump ship. I mean,
but then that conference is maybe theirs.
Can Texas Tech be the face? Who's the face of the Big 12 if Oklahoma and Texas leave?
Right now, honestly, what I think it's Iowa State maybe.
And imagine if you would have told somebody that 10 years ago. That there's a chance 10 years from now that Iowa State's going to be the face of the Big 12.
But am I crazy for saying that?
I just don't see Kansas.
Baylor was okay recently, but Iowa State, recently they've been kept it going. I honestly think it would be Iowa State, K-State, but Kansas though for basketball that's different. This is football we're talking about, obviously, but basketball is another thing to watch. All these other sports, Big 12 basketball, I actually really enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
But with Oklahoma leaving, who's been really good, right, and Texas, who is top of the conference arguably right now in basketball, that hurts that too.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I'm more trying to figure out why this report dropped now because it doesn't see, as we said earlier, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense for either team. But
except for money,
money makes sense. Yeah, money always talks, but
drives everything.
What I'll end this topic on is Oklahoma has not flatly denied it yet.
No,
they have not flatly denied it. They have kind of skirted around and said we're focused on the football season right now. And then we've had Texas, who has very much skirted around the issue. They have not given a straight answer yet. Bowlesby from the Big 12 also said something along the lines of we're focused on the football season right now. So I'm still waiting to hear somebody come out and flatly deny these rumors, which I haven't heard yet.
Yeah, I love Stuart Mandel's tweet. He said there's a lot of non-denial denials going on right now. Which makes total sense. Also, did you see what Texas A&M AD said about this whole situation?
No, let's hear it.
Ross Bjork on news that Texas and OU could be coming to the SEC. He said, quote, "We want to be the only SEC team from the state of Texas," which kind of goes to what you and I were saying, why they got the hell out of there. Yeah. And if Texas did move over, to A&M would just be like, what the hell, guys? Come on. That's what they'd say. Be depressing. For them.
Yeah. I'm going to finish up this segment here by getting into the Cleveland.com 2021 Big Ten poll. I want to get Babber's thoughts on this here next segment, as we have Ohio State being selected unanimously by 34 beat writers and also people who cover the Big Ten as a whole. 34. The Cleveland put this together, I think, whenever Nebraska joined the Big Ten is whenever they started this poll. And it's kind of been the de facto preseason poll that we've been watching, and Ohio State was picked not unanimously, nearly unanimously as champ of the Big Ten. They were picked unanimously as champ of the Big East. They got all 34 first place votes.
Can I guess who they picked for second? Was it Wisconsin?
So yes,
it was
yes,
Wisconsin.
Yes. So the champion of the West, 29 first place votes was Wisconsin. Iowa received 5 first place votes as well. So if you're checking, 28 people have Ohio State beating Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. 5 people have Ohio State beating Iowa, and then a lonely one has Wisconsin beating Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game.
One person, huh?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. There's a chance.
Rounding out the Big Ten West, though, again, Wisconsin number 1, Iowa number 2. Coming in 3rd, Northwestern. Coming in 4th, Minnesota. Nebraska comes in at number 5. Purdue comes in at 6, and Illinois comes in at 7. So when you look at that 5, how does that strike you right off the bat? 5.
Well, it's not last, and I'm not surprised, honestly. There's nothing that media members have seen that says to them that we should be more than that. And I haven't seen anything that says we should be more than 5th either.
I get it. I get it. I'm not mad by any means. Do I think Nebraska is better than a fifth-place team in the West? Not to drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah, I think on paper they have the talent to be a better team than, say, a Minnesota or a Northwestern.
I agree with that. But
I do believe that. It's a question of pulling it all together, A, and B, these media members are sitting at home, and they've been burned by Nebraska the past 2 years. People saying Nebraska's going to be good this year. Nebraska's going to be better this year.
But let's be smart. Let's be smart. Look at the schedule, Elijah. Do you see more than 7 wins on that schedule? Because I don't. Not for sure. Straight up, we're winning that game. So, I mean, looking at that.
When was the last time you were ever able to look at a Nebraska football game on a schedule and say, yeah, put it in pen, that's a win?
2009.
I mean, maybe 2017. There was that decent, I guess 2016, that decent Mike Riley year where they started out the year like 7-0, 8-0.
Even that was a fluke.
A little bit. They were winning a lot of those games close. But, like, I don't blame the media members by any means here. Fifth seems about right. I think Nebraska's defense is good enough to carry them higher than a fifth-place spot. It's a question of the offense. How much has the offense come along in this offseason? Can the offense tie it all together? So Nebraska comes in at fifth in the preseason Big Ten Bowl. But as we saw from Nebraska baseball this year, preseason polls don't mean anything.
Agreed.
But they are good for setting expectations, and that's what the beat writers are expecting from Nebraska this year, a fifth-place finish in the Big Ten West. We'll get Mike Babcock's thoughts on that next and a whole lot more. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Hey, Jim, check it out. It's a plane pulling a banner.
Oh, cool. Play Lucky for Life from the Nebraska
Big Ten Media Day coverage tomorrow and Friday. Make sure to follow ESPN Lincoln on Twitter as we're going to be posting all the interviews Schmidt is handling live on the ESPN Lincoln Twitter page. That's where you follow Big Ten Media Days, at least our coverage of Big Ten Media Days. But excited now to welcome in Husker historian Mike Babcock, and Mike's been covering Huskers football for so long that I'm sure media days like this is just another one in the list. But what I will say, Mike, is that it just feels like Husker football season is like finally actually like here. It's starting to feel real. We're going to get these interviews, these players going up to Indianapolis like this year and conducting these interviews. It just feels like, okay, like we're here, we've made it. It's almost fall camp time. Is that how you're feeling?
Yeah, although I think it never ends, with recruiting and so forth. There's always a lot of discussion going on and so forth. But yeah, this is here's the kickoff, I guess, with media days and it's there's a lot of energy there. It's always kind of exciting to see what this produces. But you guys were talking earlier about Nebraska fifth in the division. You think that's accurate?
Well,
I think with the schedule, it's definitely possible, Mike.
I don't know. I'm looking at it, and I go 5 is a bit harsh, but also whenever you look at the performance of Nebraska over the last 2 years, yeah, I mean, I could see Nebraska finishing fifth. I think a fourth or a third place is a little bit more likely, but if Nebraska finishes fifth this year, I think they can still have a successful season.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people. I think 6-6 is reasonable, and if they go 7-5 overall, I think that's a good season. But people look at me like, why are you being so negative? But I think I'm just trying to be realistic, in that situation. And so the 6-6 put them in fifth place in the division. I've seen people say, well, they're going to compete for the division title. I would be surprised if that's the case, but I've been surprised by a lot of things, and I don't know where the Huskers are at right now. I know, like you mentioned, I think there's a good defense to look forward to, and Adrian Martinez, you've got a quarterback that can be a stellar performer, but an offensive line, I think the offensive line is going to be pretty good. But you've got to have somebody establish a running game. It can't always be the quarterback. And some receivers have to step up, and they're probably going to be transfers.
Hey, Mike, they got Minnesota finishing above us. Are you convinced what they got going on up there?
No, I'm not convinced of what they got going on up there. But, I haven't been convinced of that in some other situations, and the Minnesota has played pretty well. And the game is in Minneapolis, so, that's a... as I look at it, and I figure that Nebraska is going to beat Illinois. Illinois has got a new coach, a lot of guys coming back, but a new coach. And then, Nebraska is going to beat Fordham, and Nebraska is going to beat Buffalo, I think. and probably not going to beat Oklahoma. And then you open with Michigan State, the rest of the schedule, and that's at Michigan State. I think that's a critical game to determine where Nebraska finishes in terms of success in the conference games. But you've got Northwestern, Michigan before you play Minnesota. So maybe Nebraska can build some momentum, and maybe I'm going to be wrong about 6-6, but 7-5 might be realistic then. But Minnesota is up there. Depends on what Nebraska does, I think, in the games leading up to that.
Mike, do you think we can know how good Nebraska football is going to be in 2021 before they take that trip down to Norman? I mean, Illinois is a bit of a wild card because of the new head coach. Buffalo is a bit of a wild card because Leipold left and went down to Kansas. And then Fordham's Fordham. But at the same time, if Nebraska has some convincing wins in those games, do you think that's a sign of things to come, despite the fact that we don't really know how good those three teams are?
Yeah, that's it's really tough to say. I guess I'm not totally looking past Illinois because of the number of players that are coming back, that opted to come back. But there's always a transition under a new coach, and so you've got to make the adjustment there. And the same with Buffalo. I mean, I really think Buffalo would have been a much different game, even though it's in Lincoln, if Lance Leipold had stayed. So Buffalo's making a transition to a new coach as well. And Fordham, that was the 7 block Granite played in the 30s, so never mind that. But I think that game was basically scheduled, to get a game early in the season at home, but to get a win. So I don't think you can really say what it's going to be like until Nebraska goes to Oklahoma. And maybe Nebraska will play Oklahoma tough there. And if so, there's reason for optimism. If you win the first 3 and you play well at Oklahoma, there's reason for optimism, I believe.
Mike Babcock, Husker historian, author and editor of Hail Varsity Magazine, with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Mike, when you look at the East, Ohio State, unanimous selection to win the Big Ten East this year, and they got 33 out of 34 votes to win the Big Ten as a whole. So do you think there's any good candidates for a team that could take down Ohio State this year, either in the East or in the Big Ten championship game, or do we think this is going to be another year of Ohio State kind of dominating and having their way in the Big Ten?
Well, I kind of expect that to be the case, but Ohio State has lost a lot of talent because of the NFL talent there and the guys moving on. So there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment there, but there's a lot of talent funneling into Ohio State, and so I would be surprised, I guess, if it's not Ohio State. But again, college football, that's one of the things that's fun about it, although it's getting to the point, now where we look at the playoffs and it's Clemson, it's Alabama, it's Ohio State. It seems like it's the usual suspects, but I still think that there's a possibility, that you just never know. That's why I play the games, and so I'm going to go in with an open mind from that standpoint.
We're talking to Mike Babcock. Mike, the big news that came out just a few hours ago, we have Oklahoma and Texas reportedly contacting the SEC about maybe joining at some point. And, my question to you is, Elijah and I spent the first segment trying to figure out why these teams would be doing this. Can you think of any reasons why?
I can't think of any reasons either, unless, like somebody pointed out, that they would do that if they wanted something. But there's not much they can want in the Big 12. They've got it. They pretty much control it. So that perplexed me a little bit. I don't know why you would want to go into the SEC when, if you stick in the Big 12, you've got an opportunity to win that conference and to get into the playoffs. I think your chances are going to be diminished, obviously, if you go into the SEC. I don't know. I don't have a good explanation of why they might be considering that. I look at that and I think, gosh, I was one of the people that said Nebraska made a mistake moving to the Big Ten, but now you get to this point, I would not want to be in the Big 12 with that kind of with that kind of baggage at this point. I think the Big Ten is much more solid conference than the Big 12. Obviously, that's a work in progress, and it continues to be, I guess.
Mike, when you hear this report, I know we don't know if it's true or not, but if it is that a sign that the Big 12 conference as a whole may be dying? I mean, whenever the top two teams in the conference, the two big money makers are saying, hey, maybe it's time for us to jump ship, is that a sign that the Big 12 may not be around for much longer?
Well, what do you got left? Well, I mean, what's your featured team in the conference when those two teams leave? And, it's like, whatever Texas does, Oklahoma's going to do, because they've got that connection. That was one of the things that when they went to divisions in Nebraska was, when they started the Big 12, Oklahoma and Texas were in the same division. They're going to play every year. That was important. Nebraska fans looked at it and said, well, why are we not playing Oklahoma every year? That's a big rivalry, but for Oklahoma, it's always been Texas, and anything beyond that, not Oklahoma State, not Nebraska. Whatever Texas does, Oklahoma's going to do. So, I don't know who initiated the thought, but if it was Texas, which it probably was, then Oklahoma was probably right there. But like you say, why would you go into the SEC and diminish your chances of really being a playoff team? I think.
Mike, let's say they do leave. Let's say they go to the SEC. Where does that leave the Big 12? I mean, do you think they're better off getting some more teams, or do you think they're better off just dissolving and maybe merging with another conference?
I don't know. I look at schools and think that if Oklahoma and Texas leave, there are going to be other schools that are going to be looking to leave that conference because what's your attraction? Football is the one that drives everything. You got Kansas, great basketball program, but you just don't have a flagship program. You don't have anything. I think personally that you're going to restructure that thing dramatically. I think you've got to do. I don't know what you do. And I think there would be teams that would be looking to, maybe say, hey, maybe the Big Ten needs a couple more teams. Maybe the Big Ten gets a couple of those schools try to get into the Big Ten. But it could be the death knell for that conference. That's a tough situation without Oklahoma and Texas.
Mike, last thought here, about a minute left before we got to let you go. When you're evaluating and watching the Big Ten Media Days this week, what are you looking forward to hearing from the Husker players? I mean, I think we kind of know some of the questions they're going to be getting. So which answers do you think are going to be most important and most pertinent to the Husker media cycle? Just
positive energy. Just feel upbeat, which I think you're going to see. I mean, that's the nature of things at this point. But belief in what you're doing, and I think you'll see that. And I think that's what you need to see. But you'll probably see that from every program. At this point, you can be as good as you want to be in your mind, but that's before you start playing the games and before you start fall camp. So I just want to see that positive energy. So what you're saying is don't read too far into any of the responses this weekend? Well, no. It's good to be positive. You got to believe that you can win before you're going to win. So, that part's good. But, yeah, I think everybody's going to probably have a pretty upbeat attitude about it. You would think so. There he is, Mike Babcock, Husker historian, author, and editor of Hail Varsity Magazine. Mike, appreciate the time today. Enjoy watching these Big 12 Media Day press conferences. I know I'm looking forward to it, and have a nice weekend. Same to you guys. Yeah, we'll talk next week.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hail Varsity Wednesday. Hail Varsity on a Wednesday. It's Elijah Herbel and Will Wilson filling in for Chris Schmidt as he's on his way out to Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days. You can find us and follow us on Twitter at Willie on the Radio for Will and at Herbal Essences for myself. Give us a call, 402-466-3776 or 1-800-825-5865. That's how you get connected with the show today. And remember, all the interviews, all the content that you missed today is going to be available at espnlincoln.com, as well as the Hail Varsity Radio podcast, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. You can even ask Alexa to play Hail Varsity Radio, and she can get that done for you. That's how you get connected with us as well. And Will, efforting Shuey, is that a thumbs down for today?
Yeah, I tried him twice. Maybe he'll call us.
I'll shoot him a text.
If he sees that he missed a call, I was looking forward to talking to Shuey.
Yeah, I mean, I need some help with my golf game. And I also want to talk about Colin Morikawa. And you guys talk about this a little bit more on the morning hookup, so I guess I can defer to your knowledge here.
Oh, well, Colin's just doing amazing things right now.
Well, 24 years old, and his 8 major championships, he's already won 2.
Yep.
So he's
2 of those.
He's 25% right now. He's batting .250 in golf majors.
Yeah, more impressively, 2 of those wins were the first time he played in those tournaments. Not to mention the second time he's ever played over in Europe was at the Open, and he won it. And there's no that those courses are way different than the courses here in America. So it's very impressive. The dude's a natural, and I just think we got to get comfortable watching his name on Sunday.
Do you think he's the future of the game? I mean, you talk a whole bunch about, the golf game right now. You look at the top names: Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau. You still got Tiger Woods, but we're not sure if he's ever going to come back to the game of golf. So is Morikawa now positioned to be the next face of golf, quote unquote?
You could say that, but that's also been said for many other people. Rory, of course, but he is kind of the face of golf. When you think
at least in the European circles,
of course. Here in America, DeChambeau, he came up as an amateur, so maybe some people said that about him. Of course, he is the face of golf now. You think about golf, you think about Bryson DeChambeau, which is probably just a good way of himself marketing himself, or maybe it's just totally unintentional, and him being a brat is what makes him popular. I'm not sure. Colin, he's definitely looking like he could be around for a few years, but golf is that sport to where the next Tiger comes out of nowhere. It's true. So many people play the sport.
Well, is there going to be another Tiger though?
No, probably not. But never say never. I mean, nobody thought anybody would break, Arnie and Jack and those guys. Tiger did, so it could happen.
Huh. But at one point in time, it was Tiger against the field on betting sports books. It was.
Oh, don't get me wrong. If there were odds, no, I would put money on nobody ever gets past Tiger. But like I said, never say never.
All right, well, let's get back into these Big Ten poll standings real quick. We'll see if we can get Mike Schuhart tracked down today. But really, when I look at this Nebraska roster as a whole, the Husker defense has potential to be, I'd say, a top 4 unit in the Big Ten. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but when I look at it, the returning experience, JoJo Doman, Cam Taylor-Britt, you have both your safeties in Markel Dismuke and Deontay Williams coming back. I loved what I saw out of Nick Henrich last year. I loved what I saw out of Luke Reimer last season. And the defensive line is still young and only improving. Damian Daniels, snacks in the middle. You got Ty Robinson, Ben Stilley. It's a formidable defense as a whole, and I think it's a defense that's good enough to carry Nebraska to a higher spot than number 5 in the Big Ten West. Am I wrong?
You're right, but Big Ten, it's gotten to a point to where offense is almost more important than defense, and I know that's not the traditional thing of saying it, but it's true. I mean, you look at what each team is returning on that side of the ball. The only team really above Nebraska on that side is Minnesota, and they are bringing Minnesota. They're bringing back looks like 10 players on defense. Nebraska's bringing back 10 as well. So that's kind of the Nebraska, Minnesota has the most returning talent on that side of the ball, which I guess is positive. And I agree, Elijah. If there's one thing that's going to help us win this year, it's the defense. So that's the part I have the most confidence in. But you still got to score the ball, right? Let's be real. The last 3 seasons, what's been the issue? Yeah, defense has been bad, but we haven't been able to score the ball, Elijah.
It's been turnovers. Turnovers have plagued the Husker offense. Last season, it was a lack of having any running back that was able to consistently get you more than 3 yards a carry.
And throwing the ball downfield.
And throwing the ball downfield is one of those issues where I look at, and it's been a problem really since Stanley Morgan left. But Adrian was able to throw the ball down the field while he had Stanley Morgan. Once he had a big threat like that, and I don't want to read too far into a spring game, but Omar Manning looked to me like a guy who could be at that level of Stanley Morgan. When I looked at how he was beating, really good Husker cornerbacks deep. He was beating them physically. He was out jumping them. I'm really high on the possibilities of Omar Manning this year. And do I think it's enough to carry Nebraska to number 1 in the Big Ten West? No, I'm not going to go that far. I think Wisconsin, with what they're returning, Graham Mertz at quarterback, I forget their running back's name, but he's on the Doak Walker Award watch list this offseason. And, he obviously gets the Wisconsin running back bias there because what Wisconsin running back isn't going to get enough carries to at least be in consideration for the Doak Walker. Yeah. But Wisconsin is the obvious pick for top of the Big Ten West. And I think really Wisconsin, aside from the crossover against Ohio State and the Oklahoma game, is the toughest matchup for Nebraska on this roster this year just because of how their team is constructed and how they've really been the Achilles heel for Nebraska going back to the Mike Riley era.
Yeah, I don't even want to know the last time Nebraska beat Wisconsin at Camp Randall. I don't even want to know that stat. I agree. That's going to be one of the tougher games. Obviously, Oklahoma is going to be just a junkyard game. It's going to be, it could be very bad. Let's put it that way. But I agree, man. I don't really know what to say. 5th is exactly where I think.
5th is exactly, really?
Listen, man, what have you seen? What have you seen the past 3 years that tells you we should be, higher than the middle of the conference? What have you seen?
It's the defense, really.
But not even, I wouldn't even say the defense was great last year. It was okay.
It was okay, but you're returning 10 starters who, I'm expecting improvement. I'm expecting improvement from the there's always potential for a step back from the defense, but I don't see it with just the talent and the 6-year experience you have on the defense. And if the defense can hold their opponents in the Big Ten to 20 points a game, somewhere in that range, 20 to 25, I think Nebraska should have a potential to be in every game they play.
We've been saying that the past 3 years, and we don't end up scoring the ball to where that's not true. We've held people to 20 points, and we end up losing because we can't score.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a fair point. I look at Northwestern last year. You had every right to win that game if you had a little bit of offense. Iowa last year, just a little bit more offense. I think Iowa scored, 31 against Nebraska last year?
Yeah, it was around there.
Which... that's a lot of points for Iowa, but Nebraska was in a position to win that game if you don't turn the ball over.
We played them close.
I really just I don't want to be too high in Nebraska, and you don't know anything right now.
I hate thinking about that game. So ugly, so gross. So many turnovers that game. We probably would have won that game if we didn't turn the ball over. Remember that fumble? Yeah. Martinez's fumble in the backfield, man.
If you can fix some snaps across the season last year, I don't know. Maybe we'll get some thoughts from Scott Frost about the preseason projections from Big Ten Media Days. Again, Chris Schmidt on the way out to Indianapolis. Will Wilson, Elijah Herbel filling in. We'll wrap up Hour 1 next on Hail Varsity Radio.
Chime in 402-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Elijah Herbel, Will Wilson in for a Wednesday edition Hail Varsity Radio presented by the Nebraska Lottery. As Schmitty off to Big Ten Media Days, we're going to have some wall-to-wall coverage here on ESPN Lincoln. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but if you follow the ESPN Lincoln Twitter page, you'll be able to catch every single interview Schmitty is conducting out at Big Ten Media Days, even the ones that won't make it on Hail Varsity Radio. They're all going to be on ESPN Lincoln. Find ESPN Lincoln on Twitter. That's how you stay up to date with all things Hail Varsity Radio at Big Ten Media Days. If you're looking to make a move in 2021, you got to give the real estate professionals at West Blue Realty a call today. They specialize in residential home sales in Lincoln and the surrounding communities, and they'll help make your next move a smooth one. Now, if you're thinking about selling some agricultural land, well, they've experienced selling agricultural land as well. They have an experienced auctioneer and can handle anything from live auctions, sealed bids, and general land listings. They've sold land all over, and they can sell your land as well. Remember to call Tom Luby or Kelly Hofschneider for more details. You can get Tom 402-540 3768, or Kelly at 402-202-2312. Call them for more details. Remember, it pays to work with West Blue Realty. You can find them down at 1120 K Street, Suite 200, or westbluerealty.com. And remember, when you're making that next move, you got to ask yourself, what can West Blue do for you? So, Will, we have some Husker baseball news that we can get into very briefly here, as there was talks maybe Jackson Hallmark, after going undrafted in this year's draft, could return for a super senior season. And I guess maybe super senior season, because I think he's a year older than me, just based on the class standings at UNL. I believe he was a fifth-year senior this year. You can correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yes. Actually, he might even have 2 more years left.
Well, because his COVID season, I think, was going to be a senior season, and this was like his true...
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
This turned out to be a senior season, but then I think he had the chance to come back. But we've learned today Jackson Hallmark has signed as an undrafted free agent with the Houston Astros organization. I know he's a Texas kid himself, so I bet he's over the moon to be signed with the Houston Astros. Good for Jackson. And as for the Huskers, likely 3 brand new outfielders in this Husker baseball starting lineup next season.
Yeah, and which is okay. Hey, if there's one thing I've learned from Will Bolt so far, he can work that portal, and he can also get some talent in here. And with the season they just had, I don't think it's going to be an issue to be getting players here, especially with NIL. I think compared to other schools, players can really profit here off Nebraska baseball than players.
Well, it's Nebraska baseball has better fan support than any other team in the Big Ten.
Right. So
none, not close.
It's not going to be that hard to fill those spots. Also, I feel like we just got some kids on this team that can play so many different positions. It's not going to be an issue. I congrats to Hallmark. That's cool. He's following the steps of former Husker Jake Myers. He's also in that organization. He actually is up at AAA in Sugar Land. The Sugar Land Skeeters is their AAA team. And that's where Jake Myers is at. And he's actually having a pretty good year, by the way. Myers, he's over 10 bombs on the year. So, good luck to Jackson. You're right. I bet he's jacked to be playing in Texas.
Yeah, good for Jackson. Great for Jackson, actually. Happy for him. And as you said, Will Bolt, when you look at the radius around here, when you look at Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, Colorado, Nebraska baseball is, with their fan support, the premier destination, and I think Nebraska will rebound on his feet, and best to Jackson Hallmark as he is off to fulfill his pro baseball dreams. We're going to have Jacob Padilla talking some pro basketball after the break. His son's falling last night to Giannis and the Bucks. It's Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Rolling into hour 2 here on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Elijah Herbel and Will Wilson in today as Schmitty, somewhere east of Nebraska, on his way to Indianapolis, as he's had a couple flights rerouted. But we'll have Schmitty back tomorrow live from Indianapolis, as he's going to be tracking down all the interviews he can get out at Lucas Oil Stadium. We have a statement from Oklahoma, this via Brett McMurphy. Oklahoma statement saying the college athletics landscape is shifting constantly. We don't address every anonymous rumor, that obviously referring to the report that Texas and Oklahoma have been eyeing a move from the Big 12 to the SEC. That's been the big news today. So, Jacob, I want to start off there. What's your reaction to that rumor, and what's your reaction to the statement here from Oklahoma, not denying it, but saying we're not going to address every anonymous rumor that's out there?
Yeah, it's kind of a, you caught us, but we're not actually going to say anything about it kind of deal. It definitely wasn't a full denial. They came out harder with their statement about the Nebraska game than about this rumor. So that was certainly an interesting statement. I thought we were kind of cooled off on the conference expansion and conference movement and all that for a while, but apparently they're not happy with what's going on with the Big 12 or whatever the deal is. I guess we'll see what happens there on that front.
Talking with Jacob Padilla, a writer for Hail Varsity Magazine. Jacob, we'll get into some basketball here in a second, but my takeaway from this statement is it reads a lot like that Nebraska statement whenever they got caught trying to reschedule that Oklahoma game, essentially saying, we looked into options, as you do, but we're fully committed to playing Oklahoma. That's what I get here is, we may have looked into it. The college athletics landscape is changing, but we're not going to address that rumor. Yeah,
basically it's like, it's not a denial is what it is, but it's basically, don't ask us about it anymore. We're not going to talk about it. So I guess just kind of keep an eye out on further reports on this front. They're obviously not going to address it until something actually happens, but not surprised at all to see that obviously Oklahoma was looking the last round of conference expansion. They were looking elsewhere. Texas, you never know what is going on there. They always want to be kind of the big story. So not terribly surprising. Big 12's done pretty well to hang on since the teams left the conference, but SEC is a little different deal.
You can find him on Twitter at Jacob Padilla _ for Jacob Padilla, obviously, who we're talking to right now. Jacob, don't hang up on me because I texted you last night before the finals game very specifically. I didn't want to get you in a bad mood after last night, and we got you locked in. But now I got to ask you, what's your reaction to Game 6 of the finals last night and the finals as a whole as Chris Paul denied his chance at a ring by Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks?
Yeah, I think the first takeaway just has to be just awe of what Giannis Antetokounmpo did in this series. I kind of wrote about it a little bit in my column, my padding the stats for today. But just he's basically in some of the elite company in the history of the game for what he did this series and this playoffs. Just 3 40-point games, obviously closing it out with a 50-14 performance. There really wasn't anything the Suns could do to stop him, and he was even hitting free throws on top of everything else he was getting. So just an all-time performance by one of the best players in the game. And if the Suns had to go down, I'm okay with it happening like that against just an absolute force of nature that I don't think there was any team in the league that really could have done much about what he was doing in Game 6.
We're talking to Jacob Padilla. Now, Jacob, I'll admit it, I picked the Suns last night. I thought they were going to get it done. I thought, the Bucks not being in that position in a very long time was going to maybe hurt them. But I wasn't thinking that about the Suns, and I maybe should have been, right? I mean, because they got a few guys there that haven't been in the finals before either. Do you think that came into play last night?
Definitely, and I think all three of those, they're young, kind of the young core there with Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, and Mikal Bridges. They just weren't quite ready for the moment. And we've seen Devin Booker step up big time in these playoffs at different stretches and close out games before. So it's not like he's incapable. It just didn't happen in Game 6. And kind of the same deal with DeAndre Ayton. And so the Suns, I think they learned a lot from this series, that they weren't quite ready to pull it off. But kind of just looking back, the frustrating part was there wasn't anything they were going to be able to do about Game 6 and what Giannis himself was doing, but that the one they let get away there with all the offensive rebounds, games 3 and 4, you felt like they should have won at least one of those games. They had a chance to win that Game 4, and they just didn't take care of what they could control with the box outs, the turnovers, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the part that is really frustrating to look back on now, but this was an incredible run. For those guys never playing in the playoffs before, to what Devin Booker did, what DeAndre Ayton did this year in the postseason, just something that they can really learn from and grow off of. And I don't think the Suns are going away anytime soon. It
was good to see Frank the Tank get a few minutes and some buckets last night, though.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest upset of the night, is Frank coming in and actually helping the Suns, keeping them afloat when they absolutely needed it with Ayton in foul trouble.
Jacob, last thought here on finals before we get to some Husker basketball, and that's on the other side, Giannis Antetokounmpo. You touched on him briefly, but I just wanted to ask you about his status now among the league's best. I mean, after a couple years of bowing out of the playoffs, some would say blowing it in the playoffs after coming in as a number 1 seed. Do you think he's cemented himself as a top 5 or top 3 player in the NBA now?
Oh, I think he was already there. Like,
is he number one now?
I mean, that's always a kind of ever-changing conversation. But I think people too often, basketball fans, go straight to trying to tear players down. They pinpoint one little weakness and then kind of discredit everything they've accomplished. Like, Giannis is one of the most unbelievable players, athletes in the game, and the kind of the conversation about him not being skilled, like the James Harden shade thrown at him, it was always ridiculous. And yeah, you can't hit a fadeaway jumper like Kevin Durant, but he finds other ways to impact the game at the highest level. So he's absolutely, I mean, 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Finals MVP. There isn't much left for him to prove at this point outside of just maintaining this level of play.
Yeah, I swear he takes 2 strides from the three-point line. He's already at the rim. But Jacob, before we let you go, we still have some time here. Don't worry about time. We do have to get some Husker basketball thoughts, as the news of the weekend was Ramel Lloyd Jr. out of California committing to the Huskers. We talked to him on Monday, and he's intriguing in my eyes, especially when you see his stature playing with Amari Bailey and Bronny James and just all the attention that's on that Sierra Canyon basketball team. What do you make of this pickup for Fred Hoiberg and the Huskers?
It's a good commit. He's a really intriguing player, 6'6", kind of the versatility to run the point and defend multiple positions, play off the ball as well. Again, going out to California, they've had some success there with Wilhelm Breidenbach. They're recruiting some other players out there. And he's a top 100 type of player, 4-star recruit. So you add him to Blaze Cada in that 2022 class, and Nebraska's off to a really solid start, coming off, obviously, a 2021 recruiting class that's the best since they started kind of tracking recruits. So I think they're in a good place right now, and if they have some success, if this season kind of goes the way some of these guys think it can, they'll be able to kind of really get on a roll here and build off of this and keep landing recruits like this.
I was going to say, Jacob, you got to talk to the team a little bit, got to see some coaches. What was kind of the overall feeling you were getting there?
Yeah, it was good just to be back in person. It was kind of crazy. Yesterday, I've been writing about him for an entire year, but yesterday is the first time that I spoke with Trey McGowan's and Lat Man in person, shook Lat's hand for the first time. It's kind of bizarre, the coverage of the last year, everything. Even when you're going to games and you're in the same building, you're still doing the press conferences over Zoom and all that kind of stuff. So it was good to kind of see these guys in person, kind of get eyes on the newcomers. Wilhelm Breidenbach kind of had this story about kind of his posture changing and measuring in at 6'10.5" now, and he definitely looked taller in person than he did like when I was watching his games on YouTube. So it's good. I mean, coverage is so different when you're actually around the team. You get to kind of interact with the players a little bit more freely. It's on kind of on Zoom. It's just a little bit more controlled, structured. It's kind of harder to really kind of get a whole lot out of that. Whereas kind of in-person conversations, a little bit more free-flowing, you can put a name with a face and get a lot more out of it. So I'm glad that we're getting back to kind of normal, and we're going to talk to another group of players next week, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
Talking with Jacob Padilla here on Hail Varsity Radio. You can find him on Twitter at @JacobPadilla_. And Jacob, we mentioned recruiting. So with 3 of the 4 highest-rated Husker basketball recruits ever either committing or signing to play with this program, what do you think a sign of progress for this team is going to be in the 2021-2022 season, aside from what's going on in the wins and losses? Like, just from the eye test, from the stats, what do you think is a sign of progress saying this Husker basketball team is indeed getting better and getting closer to that promised land where they want to be?
Well, I mean, the key is going to be the efficiency. Can these guys actually shoot at the level that Fred Hoiberg's system needs in order to have success? They've got some guys in here that are really kind of noted for their shooting. You got C.J. Wilster coming in as a transfer. Bryce McGowan's obviously he can shoot the ball. You got Kisei Tominaga, who's playing with his Japanese 3x3 team in the Olympics coming up. Will be coming in. Keon Edwards can shoot the ball. Kobe Webster coming back. So you've got some guys that are capable. Now, can you go out and do it and be consistent in the game? Lat Mayen said he wants to lead the Big Ten in three-point percentage. He was at 35% last year, which is fine, but it's not good enough for a guy that's kind of one of the designated shooters on the team, and kind of that's where he provides his most value. So I think that the three-point percentage, the overall field goal percentage, that's going to be an area where that's going to be where we see whether or not this is going to work. Are things going to click? Do they have enough shooters for Fred Hoiberg's kind of spaced out, free-flowing system to be effective enough to win in the Big Ten?
We're talking to Jacob Padilla. Also, Jacob, I really like, what we got going on down low. And, looking at the Big Ten with Coburn coming back and a few others, this is a conference that you really got to be big down low, and I'm confident in that, especially with Derek Walker. I think Derek Walker is going to be a problem this year in a good way.
Yeah, it'll be good to have him for a full season. He's one of the vocal leaders on this team. He's steady. He's able to he's a guy that you can kind of initiate offense through, get him the ball in the high post, and he can hit cutters. He obviously set ball screens and finish in the pick and roll. And then we've got Eduardo Andre, who Lat Mayen spoke highly of, and who the coaches have praised as well, his development, coming off that freshman year where he got COVID right at the start of the year and was out, kind of had to play catch-up. And then later in the season, he kind of won that backup center job over Ivan Wodrago and finished the season strong. And he's a guy that they're really high on. So you got him with the 7'4.5" wingspan, kind of coming off the bench as a rim protector who has added some significant muscle. And he's got a little bit of offensive skill as well. So you got those two. I think you feel really good about that. Plus Mayen and Breidenbach mixing in there as kind of skilled 4 or 5 combo types. And then Oleg Kozinets as kind of a project center behind those guys who probably they're kind of hoping to fill into the Andre role from last year where kind of slots in there as a third-string guy and then sees how he can develop as the season goes on.
Jacob, do you think, when we've talked about Husker football, it's been kind of Scott Frost learning how to adapt his system to the Big Ten, kind of learning and getting better in the Big Ten, just finding the right fit to make his offense work in the Big Ten. Do you think there's any of that with Husker basketball? When you look at the type of guys they've been recruiting, I look at Wilhelm Breidenbach, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that guy's name that you just mentioned. That's on me. I don't have a pronunciation guide in front of me, so I'm just not even going to try to butcher it. But do you think that Fred is kind of going to a different system he had at Iowa State with, going a little bit bigger?
Not really. I don't think it's just a matter of kind of who are the guys that he can get in the program that he feels are good fits. Fred did have a couple of bigger guys at Iowa State. Just kind of the thing about Fred's years at Iowa State is those teams were very different from year to year. He had, with the way they were kind of reloading the roster from year to year, they changed. They had different players were in different positions each year, and he kind of structured his system around those. He had, obviously, transfer that first year that played for the Rockets. I cannot think of his name off the top of my head right now, but kind of the point center type. And then later on, he had kind of transfers where DeAndre Kane, big physical guard, 6'4". You had Jameel McKay as a shot blocking. He's not huge, but kind of one of the better shot blockers in the league. So he's had a lot of different kind of players fit into his system and play different roles. So I don't know necessarily that he's changing anything. I think he's just trying to get enough guys, the talent into the program to where what he's trying to do can hold up against the talent they see in the Big Ten.
Jacob, last thought, about 10 seconds. Is it NCAA tournament or bust for this Huskers roster this year? Is that what they're thinking?
I wouldn't say bust. That's definitely their goal. That's their plan right now. All the young guys said that's something they talk about. Like they came here to make history, to do something nobody's ever done before. They believe they have the pieces to do it. I don't know that it's a or bust mentality where coming off a back-to-back 7-win seasons, like if they fall a little bit short and go into the NIT, I don't know that would be a disaster. The key this year is just showing that they belong in the Big Ten, that they can compete with all the teams in the league and win some of these games. And then we'll kind of let the win-loss record fall in the postseason fade kind of forward to May as long as they make that progress on the court.
Jacob, appreciate the time today.
Yep, no problem.
Now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Elijah Herbel, Will Wilson, here on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. You can find us and follow us on Twitter at Willie on the Radio for Will and at Herbal Essences for myself. As we'd be a little remiss here if we didn't get into the NBA Finals. It was an awesome 6 games, the NBA Finals. It's kind of the first time we haven't had a super team in the finals in a while, so it was good. I mean, you could argue that Lakers team last year wasn't a true super team, but I'd still say it feels like the last time since those Warriors really started getting good that we haven't had a super team playing in the finals. I mean,
in the finals,
you could even argue that the Miami Heat were a super team before that, though.
Well, with LeBron?
Yeah.
Oh, they were. Yeah, no, they were.
So this might
Let's
be
not fool ourselves.
The first time we haven't had a super team in the finals in 10 years.
It's been a while. But like you said, I don't know if I'd say that Lakers team was a super team last year. I mean, they were stacked, but they definitely didn't play dominant like a super team. So I want to go that far. But yes, as far as two vanilla teams, two teams that are very far away from a super team, that's what it was.
Well, we'll get into a little bit whether we thought these were the truly the two best teams in the NBA this season. Injuries played a huge factor in this NBA season, but Bucks getting the win in Game 6, 105-98. And if you're keeping track at home, that means Elijah Herbel won the stake in a beer bet last night, despite the fact that I have already lost the series by a score of 4-2. So I'm the Suns and Chris is Milwaukee in this stake in a beer bet.
Yeah, I'm with you. I
finals.
lost a round of golf with hooks earlier today. I'm be down $120. Well,
he's making you pay up.
Well, listen, I got to bring him out to Hillcrest, which is where I golf at, but I can't just. Mom said no, you can't charge it to the account. So it's like I don't know. We'll see what happens.
He's the owner of Slim's Chickens.
You tell him that.
I guess a businessman, you always got to have the bottom line in mind. But Giannis, incredible performance last night. 50 points, 10 rebounds, 5 blocks for Giannis. I guess technically 13 rebounds for Giannis. He's in that 14, 10, and 5, which he is the only player in NBA history to have 15, 10, and 5 blocks, that is, in an NBA Finals game. So, in a company all his own, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he spoke after the game last night a little bit about what this means to him, his journey from the streets of Greece, essentially, all the way up to NBA MVP, now NBA Finals MVP, and NBA champion. Here's Giannis.
I started playing basketball just to, help my family, try to get them out of the struggle, the challenges we were facing when we were kids. But man, I never thought, I'm going to be 26 years old, with my team playing the NBA Finals, just playing. And I was just happy just being a part, not even winning, just being a part of this journey, but I never thought ever when I'll be 26, I'll be sitting in this chair with this right here and this right here. Man, it's been we've come a long way.
And he speaks about coming a long way, and that is an understatement. I was watching a breakdown last night, essentially, of Giannis's journey to the NBA, and he wasn't like one of those European stars that everybody knew and everybody was drooling over. He wasn't a Kristaps Porzingis. He wasn't a Luka Doncic. Those are the guys that were coming into this league a couple years ago, and they were essentially a can't-miss prospect.
Yeah.
I mean, there was always the little bit of bias against European players coming into the NBA, and everyone saying, oh, why would you pick him when this guy's available? But Giannis he didn't come from that mold. He wasn't one of those household names that you knew before the draft. I knew Kristaps Porzingis before the draft. I knew Luka Doncic before the draft. Before Giannis was picked in the draft, I was like, I don't know who this dude is. Greek freak, cool. He's playing in Greece. I don't know who this dude is. And then you read his story, and I watched a video on his story, and when he was growing up, he essentially made the gym his second home. Him and his 2 brothers, where the gym was somewhere around 4.5, 5 miles away from their home. So they'd wake up early in the morning and go walk to the gym, and then they'd have first basketball practice in the morning, and then they would sleep, not eat lunch, and they would sleep at the gym. They had little workout mats that they'd put down on the basketball floor, and they would sleep and wait for their second basketball practice of the day. and then they'd go into work again, and they'd come back home, and oftentimes not have enough food to feed, the 6'8", 6'9" frame that Giannis was whenever he was 14 years old.
It's amazing.
And the family had to make a real effort just to put enough food on the plate for Giannis, because they knew Giannis was their hope. Giannis was the guy who was different than anyone else in Greece. He was different just as a whole, different than what we've seen in the NBA before, coming from Greece, being just a complete ridiculous athlete, where they had to, like, his parents were taking food off their own plates and giving it to Giannis, not literally, but figuratively, and saying, Giannis, you need to put on weight, you need to get better because you have a future in this, and you can be the person that brings our family out of the struggle.
Yeah, 100%. It's amazing to see what he did. It's crazy to think that when he came over, the only thing we really knew of him was his name and how to pronounce it. We just knew that, here's a guy from Greece. He's got a weird name. I wonder how we pronounce it. Now everybody knows how to pronounce it because he's an icon. He really is. He changed the game. I mean, when before him did we see a guy his size take the ball up and dominate that far down low? Now, obviously, you can't shoot too well from the outside, but he's kind of the first guy I remember being that 7-foot point guard in the NBA. And then we got Simmons after him, and it's kind of continued. Obviously, we've had players kind of before that. Wilt can run. Wilt, down in the day, he could run, but you never saw him pick up the ball. You never see him bring the ball up. To me, Giannis kind of started that whole thing, the whole stretch big, and I could be wrong about that. But to me, that's amazing. Yeah, you look at what he's won, Elijah. He's won every trophy you could think of. Improved player, defensive player. It's amazing.
MVP, Finals MVP. Now he's got his ring.
It's amazing.
And what I'll say about Giannis is it just feels like a dominant force in the NBA that I don't think I've seen in my lifetime. Because even LeBron in his prime there were times when he was coming downhill and he wouldn't score. But with Giannis, it feels like every single time he gets ahead of steam going, he gets going downhill, he's either going to get a bucket or he's going to get fouled and go to the line.
Find me somebody who's going to stand in front of that and take a charge.
DeAndre Ayton, the biggest guy on the court. I mean, Van Gundy was ripping him all night because he couldn't keep his shoulders square because
he let him go right by.
Van Gundy's saying, open up the chest, get the chest in front of him. Yeah. That dude is coming down the floor at 30 miles an hour. I'm not getting in front of him.
I'm not. That's a wrap. I'm in the hospital for a few days. No.
And you know what happens if you do get in front of him?
He's
got such long strides and he's so fast that you can't get position on him anyway, and it's going to be a foul on you if you do get in his way.
Yeah, he's quick, and we saw last night that when he's doing that, it's a wrap. It is. I mean, but he's still got to find something, though, Elijah, because I will stand by this. The best team did not win the finals last night.
Really?
Not even the best two teams who were in the finals last night. I know what you're thinking. The Suns, yeah, they were good. They beat the Clippers. Yeah, the Clippers didn't have Kawhi Leonard. Well, they did when they played him some games, right? Was it or no?
First two games.
Was it first? Was it even that many? Either way, remember back to the Lakers series. Phoenix was down 2-1, and then AD got hurt. You're telling me the Suns would have got out of that series with AD healthy?
Well, the injuries plagued the NBA as a whole this year. You can thank the shortened offseason last year for that, I think, in my opinion. But
come on,
the Lakers team is the one where I go, okay, I don't think that Kawhi Leonard being on that Clippers team. I just think, personally, they had better ball movement without Kawhi Leonard in the game.
Well, not even those two.
I think they might have played better, but, I mean, you look at the Nuggets wouldn't have beaten the Suns even with Jamal Murray, I don't think.
Maybe. Jokic played great.
Yeah.
Add Murray to that may be a totally different team. We didn't get to see that this year with Jokic's MVP season. Now, hold on, though. Not even those three teams. What about the Warriors?
Okay, Warriors, that's Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson changes that.
Exactly.
That dynamic completely.
So you're right. I mean, the injuries, it's part of the game, right?
Part of the game.
But I don't think the two best teams in the NBA were in the finals last night.
As for the Eastern Conference, the Nets, you think a fully healthy Nets team probably beats that Bucks team?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they almost... It was close, right? I mean, KD was, if his foot wasn't an inch longer, Nets were in that play in the Bucks.
But Giannis had his injury troubles in that Nets series as well. Remember the knee injury where it looked like he tore everything in his knee and he came back? I mean, I think he missed 2 games. And Chris Middleton willed the Bucks to the win over the Nets.
Yeah, speaking of Middleton, he had a great game last night.
Giannis is going to steal the headlines, but yeah, Middleton hit that most important shot when it's 94-90, dude, and he stepped back and drilled it. That was the most important shot of the night.
Didn't it look like Kobe? It looked like Kobe, that shot. That one shot right there looked like Kobe.
That mid-range from the elbow, stepping back, kind of fading away. You're turning your body as you're firing. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. So, Giannis, it's the biggest talking point right now. Where's he at right now as far as best player in the NBA, talent-wise? Okay? Talent-wise. We're talking best player to play basketball right now. Where's he at for you?
Well, let's make a top 5. Is LeBron still in your top 5?
Honestly, I don't have LeBron in my top 5.
Okay, because I have Kevin Durant.
He's number 1 on my list.
Kevin Durant's number 1. I don't think we saw a fully healthy Kevin Durant in the playoffs, so I can probably get behind you on that one. He's just so versatile with what he can do. I probably slot in Giannis at 2.
So I have Giannis at 3.
Who do you have at 2?
This may shock some people. I have Jokic at 2.
See, I have Giannis 2, Jokic 3.
I think. Okay, you say Jokic, I say Jokic. Is it subjective or is it actually Jokic?
I'm the Nuggets fan here, so it's Jokic.
Okay, I'll say Jokic. I have Jokic at 2, Giannis at 3. That's subjective. We agree on that. We both think they're top 3.
They're great in their own respective ways. Giannis is unstoppable, whereas Jokic is the type of guy where I think you can put him on any roster in the NBA and at least get him a top 6 seed in the NBA playoffs. Where I'm not sure if you can do that with Giannis.
Who do you have at 4?
At 4, I think I got Steph Curry.
Okay, I have Steph at 5. Mm-hmm. My 4th is Russell Westbrook.
Oh, come on. Come on.
What do you have to say about that?
He's washed.
He's washed? You're saying just the triple-double record's no big deal?
3 years ago, yeah, I'll put Russ in my top 5.
He still gets triple-doubles almost every night.
You're putting Russell Westbrook over Steph Curry?
Yeah, I am. Because no one plays as hard every single night than Russell Westbrook. But nobody does.
Okay,
and by the way, you're only saying this right now because he's in Washington and they suck.
Yeah, the Golden State Warriors sucked this year, but Steph still almost willed them to the playoffs.
So?
And it got him in the MVP talks this year just because he had a terrible roster around him and still almost got the 8 seed.
Wizards almost made it.
Wizards weren't as close as the Warriors.
Different conference.
I'll put Steph Curry number 4. Number 5, it could go to a lot of people. I still like Kawhi Leonard at number 5 just because of what he brings on both ends of the floor.
Listen, I love Kawhi. I love him. That's a good one. It's either Russell or Kawhi. But listen, right now, I think Russell. I love a player that tries, that goes out and tries every night, and that's Russell. Put him on a contender. Which, by the way, see that report today about Lakers, maybe a little sign and trade action with Russell Westbrook.
That one seems likely to me. I know Lakers fans want Chris Paul, but Chris Paul's got a $40 million player option for this year. And if I'm him, I'm not sure I'm leaving that Suns team.
No, you're not. You're not. They're only, 2 pieces away from going back? They just need someone good to back up Ayton. And, I don't know, get another shooter on that team. Because Crowder can't be shooting 9 times.
You know who I'd like on that roster? I'd like a guy like Joe Ingles on that Suns roster.
Ooh, he ain't leaving Utah.
Apparently he might be available, but that's a topic for another day. We got a Jock Doc coming up after the break. Dr. Brandon Tavis talking about Cam Akers and his Achilles injury.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back to it. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Lincoln Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us. Dr. Brandon, how are you, man?
I'm great, Chris. How are you guys doing?
We're good. We're good, and we're gearing up for football, headed to Indy. Football season's around the corner. You guys are so busy with all the care and treatment you provide, not only for football, but all the fall sports. And man, I know that it's also almost training camp time in the NFL. And a team that you've got some upside with, the LA Rams, right? You get Stafford out there at quarterback, and the way Cam Akers finished the season off, a lot of hope for him and that McVay offense. And brutal news yesterday with Cam Akers tearing his Achilles tendon. He's going to miss the 2021 season. He's a really talented back, but man, that's too bad for him. Dr. Brandon, we've talked about Achilles injuries. It feels like quite a bit for basketball, and I know they happen in football, but specific to the running back position, how damaging is this long-term here for Cam?
Yeah, it's tough. These are tough injuries. no matter what position you're in, but you start thinking about some of the agility, things they have to do, cutting, speed, all those things. An explosive athlete, such an important part of, the Achilles and what it does for them. And, kind of speaking anatomically, I think most of our listeners here will understand what the Achilles is, but just kind of an anatomic review. So if you think about kind of feeling down the back side of your leg, go all the way down to where your heel is. We call that the calcaneus. You'll kind of feel that kind of cord-like structure that hooks onto the back of your heel. That's called the Achilles. That's what we're talking about. And so the injury here obviously is a rupture or a tear in that Achilles. But again, a devastating injury for a really explosive athlete. Do you get back after these things in surgery, or whether you treat it non-op? You do, but you're different. It'd be interesting to see some really nice data on return to play rates at the NFL level with these. Again, it's always hard trying to glean data from the NFL or these professional organizations. They're not great about sharing that information, whether that's a business, it's an agent-driven thing to keep things under wrap, or if it's more of a team thing. But it's hard to get info on this. But it'd be interesting to find out, what is the level of return? What's the percentage of return for these folks back to the same level, or as a starter, or do you get back to your all-start level? It'd be interesting to know stats on that, at least at the NFL level. But yeah, he's definitely got a long road ahead of him, and a very difficult road, getting back to the success that he's had.
I look at Akers as, kind of a threat, as a safety valve catching the football, but 13 regular season games, 625 yards rushing. I know he when you look at his rookie campaign, I mean, the guy averaged 112, 113 yards from scrimmage, and he really just finished off the season well. I mean, that was such a nice glimpse as to what type of run game the Rams could have, because we know what they've been able to do with their receiving core, and you get a new quarterback in Stafford. And man, I mean, the Rams could have been in a tough division, could have been another playoff team. So when we talk about recovery and some of the what's next here for Cam Akers, from your side of things, what's his schedule look like? Not only for observation, repair, and then of course rehab.
Yeah, and what's interesting too about that is there's been I would say a shift in orthopedics in terms of, what do we do with Achilles tendons? Do you repair them? So do you surgically repair them, or do you treat them non-operatively, let them heal back on their own? And there's been a real shift in that. I would say that the studies and the data are now indicating more going down a non-operative pathway, especially in the orthopedic foot and ankle literature world. There's definitely a big push to go more towards a non-operative route. Again, as you start to stratify that for different populations, high school, college, professional athletes versus, a normal weekend warrior type, how does that play out? And I still think the data is a little bit out on that. You start to get into NFL, collegiate professional athletes, what's the right answer, surgery versus not surgery? I think if you go kind of surgeon opinion on that, most surgeons are most likely going to perform surgery on the NFL collegiate athlete with this injury. So we'll go down the pathway of the surgery route with him. I would assume that's what they're going to do. Surgery is not a long process. There's lots of techniques out there for it. The more kind of minimally invasive techniques are out there, although not super proven yet versus traditional. But once you fix them surgically, there's a period of non-weight bearing. Non-weight bearing anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks is kind of the general time frame. That's pretty variable based on surgeon. And really, you don't start much in the way of physical therapy for these. You kind of get in that same window, 4 to 8 weeks, when you start weight bearing. So at that point, you start some gentle stretching, some walking. Really, you're not doing any explosive running, jumping type stuff until you're about typically 3 or 4 months down the road, which would be the pathway he would be on. Total recovery on these, it's a good kind of year getting back. Obviously, by the time he gets to probably 5 or 6 months, he's doing most things. But it's a good kind of year recovery. Sometimes even longer in terms of redeveloping all the muscular structure, redeveloping your anatomy in that area, especially along what we call the gastroc and the soleus. Those are the two main muscular structures that make up kind of the calf complex, if you will. Getting those back takes a long time. Sometimes you never do quite regain all of those. Sometimes you have what we call atrophy, which is kind of loss of muscle mass in the area. And so that's kind of what his timetable and his course looks like. Definitely be ready for next year. But in terms of like a rushed protocol, getting back for the season, I don't imagine them trying that with him.
Well, you lost Malcolm Brown. He's with Miami. And you have a number of rookies that are going to be in camp here shortly for the Rams, and you have that free agent option. I mean, Adrian Peterson is the ageless wonder. You want to talk about surgeries and recovery and a walking billboard for successful surgery and recovery. AP's there. Le'Veon Bell is looking to bounce back. LaShawn McCoy, Shady's there. Devontae Freeman was wonderful for Atlanta, and really, once he left ATL, didn't really thrive. And then former Ram Todd Gurley, who been playing on a bum wheel for a long time, but he's not had the mileage the last year and a half or so. So they could go the veteran route. That's where the Rams could go. Last thought here, Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Cam Akers and his Achilles injury, our topic. Dr. Brandon, when we talk about the running back position, the explosiveness, and Akers is one of those just acceleration guys. He's just a big old muscle running the football, but he's not stocky. He's more lean, right? He glides. And with him, is his agility side to side going to be affected more so with this Achilles, or is it the north-south running that could take the hit?
Yeah, probably more on the side-to-side part of it. And that's going to be that part where you really have to plant that foot.
Sure.
Either, change directions the other way. And I think that's where most of that explosion will come through. Once you kind of get up to that higher end speed, you'll probably be able to clip along pretty well. But I think that kind of side-to-side cutting, quick explosive agility piece of it, I think that's where you'll see the difference, at least initially.
No, and that's to be expected as Cam Akers injured out for 2021 with the LA Rams. Tough news for a really good running back. Jock Doc Wednesday, Lincoln Orthopedic Center, and we say hi to Dr. Brandon Seifert. Dr. Brandon, have a great weekend. Have a good time in the LOC Open, and we'll get caught up again.
Sounds great, Chris. You take care.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
It's Elijah Herbel back here on a Wednesday, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, as Will Wilson off to work his other job this evening. So we got a special guest joining us here in a second. But right now I want to remind you that nearly 70% of people in fatal crashes in Nebraska are not wearing a seatbelt. If used properly, a seatbelt can reduce the risk of fatal injury by up to 60%, so your best defense in any crash is to buckle up. It's a message brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Transportation Highway Safety Office. We now are so overjoyed to welcome in with 1011. He's a producer over there, always covering LFR so well. And from the Lincoln Salt Dogs for our local listeners here on ESPN Lincoln, it's Ryan Swanigan, and he made sure he looked me in the eyes and said, Elijah, I need to get on the air to talk about Texas and Oklahoma.
I didn't say I needed to. You offered me the chance to come on last time, and I just didn't feel like it at that time. I feel like it today because I'm starting vacation, but I'm still doing Salt Dogs, which is kind of fun, actually. I like that.
Yeah, what a vacation coming in and doing a radio show.
I know, and what a day if you're a sports talk host. Anybody in the sports world right now, the Houston Chronicle should be like charging people per tweet. Every time they're referenced in a tweet, they should be charging like $5 for that, because they are owed so much today for this report because of them. Like, Twitter is blowing up about Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of Lincoln and Omaha sports talk radio hosts who are on the road to Big Ten Media Days who are like, gosh darn it, today was the day to be on air, and I have to drive in a car and have somebody else do this.
And now my producer is filling in for me.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, if you're a producer, if you're the guy who's filling in today, you better save this to your resume reel, because today is just pure gold. Like, I am just scrolling through Twitter and just seeing all these tweets about Oklahoma is we don't address rumors, and like, so, come on, What kind of a response is that?
You sure did address rumors whenever Nebraska didn't want to play Oklahoma.
Like, this is just, this is 2010. Remember when TCU and Nebraska and all that stuff was going on like 10, 11 years ago? And now here we are 10 years later. It's just like, this is obviously way bigger. I say it's way bigger because this is Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC.
Which would make the SEC the most powerful conference in college football and college sports, and it's not close.
And that's the thing, too, is like the SEC doesn't need this. They don't. Like, they really don't. And it's just, I almost like there's a part of me, that little internal anti-SEC hatred, whatever you want to call it, that's within me. That's like, do these guys just like, did they really want to just start this just to have attention back on them because they felt like the pandemic took too much attention away? Like,
or the other question is, did Texas and Oklahoma see the writing on the wall? We talked about this a little in hour one. Is the Big 12 a dying conference?
That's another very good point, too. And I think about that from time to time. It's like, who in the Big 12 is making noise other than Texas and Oklahoma? Maybe Oklahoma State, Iowa State tries to make a lot of noise. K-State certainly not. I mean, there's nothing. Oh, and also, by the way, the new ACC commissioner is now demanding that Notre Dame be an ACC football team and not an independent football team anymore.
It's going to get wild. Conference realignment's going to get wild. There is Ryan Swan. You can hear him tonight on the Salt Dogs for our local listeners. We'll be back tomorrow from Big Ten Media Days.